We move on now to the U.S., where the stock index futures pointed to a lower open on Friday morning as tech stocks continued to weigh on major indices and concerns about the economy after the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates for the second time this year. On the data front, Friday will see the release of housing starts, Atlanta Fed business inflation expectations, consumer sentiment, and oil rig count. The Fed's Dallas president, Robert Kaplan, is also due to speak. There are no earnings releases due today, and the numbers are, of course, all in the red. That's the futures numbers there. We move on now to Asia, where the bourses there closed cautiously higher after the Bank of Japan kept its policy unchanged and following the declines in tech stocks stateside. Japan's benchmark Nikkei 225 index gained 0.56%, while South Korea's Kospi erased earlier gains to close down by 0.01%. The Australian ASX 200 closed 0.19%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index was trading 0.24% higher. On the mainland, the Shanghai Composite shared 0.31% and the Shenzhen Composite slipped 0.19%. Okay, let's look at other markets, talking about Nigeria banks, Eurobond. It has been a stellar year for Nigerian bank bonds so far. Reports from an investment research company in London, Exotix Partners, indicates that spreads are as much as 900 basis points tighter than at the start of 2017. Now, Exotix Partners is recommending a buy on a number of them: Zenith Bank, UBA, FBNH, and Axis Bank. Let's talk to the author of this report titled "Nigeria Banks, We've Come a Long, Long Way." That's Tolu Alamutu, analyst at Exotix Investment Partners in London. Good afternoon, Tolu. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Now, Tolu, if you're hearing me, what are your key considerations for assigning buy recommendations to the two new global debt offerings of two Nigerian banks, that's UBA and Zenith Bank?
I'm so sorry, Chimik. Do you mind repeating the question? I didn't hear it the first time.
Well, I was talking about the key considerations for assigning buy recommendations to those two new global debt offerings of two Nigerian banks. You have UBA and Zenith Bank.
Okay. Unfortunately, the line is still very bad, but I think what I got is you asking for a summary of the reports and why we think
basically, what were your considerations in coming up with those reports?
I think what you asked for was that why we think that the Nigerian bank bonds have done relatively well. Is that correct?
Go ahead. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So we published a report on Monday this week where we basically highlighted the performance of Nigerian bank bonds over the last 12 months. In terms of yields, we are at or close to the lows for most of the Euro bonds, and I think there are very good reasons for that. One of them is that the results from the banks have been quite strong, as I think we've discussed here on channels before. Second reason is that oil prices are obviously not at the highs of over $100 per barrel, but they've definitely recovered from the lows of the first quarter of 2016. And the third and probably most important reason is the increased availability of FX to the banks, which I think has reduced concerns about the bank's ability to meet their Eurobond obligations.
Now, your views at Exotix Partners was that Nigerian bank dollar-denominated bonds are having a good year so far. Would you attribute this to any policies and actions of the Nigerian government?
If you don't mind repeating it again, the question again. I'm so sorry, the line's quite bad.
Well, Tolu, I guess we're losing you there. Perhaps when we get it right, we would get back to you. We'll continue now to commodities. Market oil prices edged up from 2017 lows on Friday, but an ongoing supply excess put them on track for their fourth consecutive week of losses despite OPEC-led production cuts to support the crude market. Brent crude futures were up 42 cents at $47.34 per barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures were at $44.74 per barrel, up 28 cents. Both benchmarks remained roughly 13% below where they stood in late May, when producers, led by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, extended a pledge to cut production by 1.8 million barrels per day by an extra 9 months until the end of the first quarter of 2018. To precious metals now, gold prices hit a 3-week low on Friday and were on track for a second weekly fall, dragged down as upbeat U.S. economic data supported the dollar. The dollar index firmed after data showed the number of Americans filing for unemployment benefits fell more than expected last week. Robust economic data could encourage the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise interest rates again this year, following a hike this week. Spot gold remained unchanged at $1,253 per ounce. Earlier in the session, it hit $1,251, its weakest since May 2024. The metal has fallen about 1% so far this week. U.S. gold futures for August delivery rose 0.1% to $1,256 per ounce. And South Sudan's Ministry of Petroleum has invited companies to bid on a public tender to perform the audit and produce a 2017 audit report on the industry. The audit tender that opens immediately is scheduled to end on July the 17th, seeks to bring transparency and enhanced efficiency into the petroleum sector of the young government of national unity of the troubled South Sudan. South Sudan seeks to have an accurate assessment of oil, condensate and gas reserves and production, as well as report on revenue and investment flows, among other issues.